We're about to start the Gilmore Gang at our 100 billionth show. So happy to have you all here. Okay, places everybody.
Okay, whoever's got that speaker on.
I took it. It's done. I took care of
it. Well, I said whoever, even though I knew who it was.
We know it. Okay. All right, here we go. All right, mute is off. And we're going
to stop.
That wasn't right?
No, that was way too long. Now we're down, at the end of the show.
Does it
just look, mute is off. I'm not saying it. just do it in a rhythm that works.
Mute is off. And we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, and
perfect. And there's Frank. This is the Gilmore Gang. I'm Steve Gilmore, and we're coming to you from wherever the hell we're coming from.
The cold California coast.
Steve, could you just say that with a better flow?
Where's that mute is off button? Okay. Welcome to the gang. Frank Radis is in New York. Welcome, Frank.
Hello, Steve. Hello, gang. Mighty gangsters. Another raucous Gilmore gang coming at you.
And not to get into it, but what do you want to talk about?
What do I want to talk about?
Yeah, what's interesting to you? We're going to do this like we did last week.
I'm still interested in the position that Cheney is in now that she is out and has been ousted for telling the truth. But
okay, good.
The role the media plays in that.
Okay, great. In Palo Alto is Keith Tier. Welcome, Keith.
Pleasure to be here. I'm enjoying Palo Alto today. It's a nice, cool but sunny day.
And what is potentially floating your boat that we may or may not talk about?
Well, there's a lot going on in the world of my work. So there's a lot happening in venture capital. It's driven by a company called Tiger Global that's doing some unusual things.
Okay, that's it. That's it. I said one.
Oh, you said one. Okay.
Yeah. Below him, at least on my screen, but not in any other way, is Dennis Pombriant. Welcome, Dennis.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Keith.
See, now that worked. I don't know what it looks like on Tina's, which is all that counts.
I'm a big Keith supporter.
All right, so Dennis.
I wouldn't be held up without you.
Dennis, anything that strikes you as something that might be interesting?
I am still fascinated by the amount of grift that's happening throughout our society, even in the tech space. I have a story about AT&T Wireless grifting, and we could do a whole show on grift. Just pick your target.
Okay. Welcome from Georgia is Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. And if you notice, I'm not wearing a Rams hat today. I'm actually wearing a kind of a chicken biscuit hat because I literally just got done doing something I thought I'd never do, which was hosting a hot wings contest that was focused around CDP.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not familiar with what the hot wings concept is.
They're little wings.
Really? You don't know what a hot wing is? Come on. Let's be real. Let's be serious here.
He does.
This is Gilmore. This is the Gilmore gang. We got to be serious about stuff.
Is that some new? It's some new tech thing, isn't it, Brent?
Yeah. No, seriously, what I don't understand is what the concept is or the contest. What are you contesting?
Well, I wasn't. I was just hosting it. But the whole idea, I can't believe we're going this deep into this, but the whole idea is to ask questions around customer data platforms and have them provide informative, but yet funny answers due to the heat that was rising with every piece of chicken they ate.
Oh, so there was eating going on, is what you're telling me.
Have you ever heard of a hot wings contest before? I mean,
So in the new normal, how does this get virtualized?
well, contestant 1 is in their home with a whole bunch of chicken and sauces, and contestant 2 is in their home with a whole bunch
See,
of chicken
this is the
and
kind of
sauces.
remedial information that I,
Oh, no, keep going. I want to hear this. What's happening? I'm fascinated by this, so don't stop.
And now on to Michael Markman. Hey, Michael, how are you doing today?
Oh man, get to the ending.
like this, Frank, right?
Jeez, no. I know what you're doing. You just want to put up a lower third. I want to hear the stories.
There were 5 lower thirds in that last story. Okay, Michael Markman, welcome.
How do you do? Weather report from Seattle. It is sunny. It is in the 70s, and we're in for a week of sunshine, which means my water bill will go up.
And that's what you want to talk about?
No. That's just a lower third business. No, I want to talk about the flip side of what Frank was talking about. We see what Cheney is doing. What is the rest of that deranged party doing?
Cool.
All right.
So my question would be, since we're already into it, is how deranged are they? Does this work for them? Are we going to see them pick up enough seats to take over the House in 2022?
No.
I think not, but I think that what they need to do is lose significant seats. And it's the only way to cure them. They think that this is their path to victory, and the only way to disabuse them of that notion is to prove them wrong.
I'm just curious though, what's the strategy? If there is a strategy behind this, to go all in on the big lie and to make it such this broad-based thing in the Senate.
The strategy relies on the fact that they are not evenly distributed across the country, so they are in concentrated pockets where they have power. And if they can control enough states, they can create maximal mischief.
But that's
the end game for them. The strategy is to rerun what Trump tried to do but failed in 2020, which is to say to get state election commissions to decertify the Democratic winner, assuming that a Democrat wins, to disqualify votes, to put obstacles in front of voters. And at the end of the day, the last step of the strategy is to have what they call a contingent election, which is to say nobody gets a majority in the Electoral College and the House gets to decide. And when the House gets to decide, it's not a question of how many Democrats and Republicans are in the House. It's a question of how many state delegations do the Republicans control? Because the rule for a contingent election is that it's 1 vote per state. So
well, and then they have obviously one additional sort of tent pole in this formula, and that is that they can simply say that the Democrats stole the election.
Well, of course they'll say that. They're saying that now.
Yeah.
The point is, can they put something behind it that changes the outcome?
Well, the only thing they can put behind it is that the redistricting affords them the opportunity, along with the voter registration brouhaha, to get their people into positions of power to win elections.
Yes.
Let's assume that they do that. Don't you think, firstly, that there'd be a good insurrection, as in as in the one that is for democracy against stitching it up, as it were? I mean, I find it very unlikely they could pull that off and get away with it without massive social consequences.
You mean the one we did in '68?
Like
no,
1776.
Yeah. I mean, we already have a revolution, right?
Yeah, there'd have to be
Okay,
another.
so Why would you? Oh, so like the Russian Revolution is what you're saying.
No, why would you put that idea into everyone's head? I'm talking. I'm talking about.
I'm learning from the master. That's right.
You're making a lot of assumptions there, Keith.
You do, yeah. You don't want to go there because I can talk at great length about the Russian Revolution, which I'm sure.
And I
our
have a
viewers-
mute button too.
But no, I'm talking about a defensive democracy against stealing, which in this case would be true. They would have stolen it.
Well, I agree with you, Keith. I think it will not succeed, but one of the ways it will not succeed can be very disruptive and can put us into something approaching widespread civil unrest. So I think there's a huge danger if the way they are now trying to deny that the assault on the Capitol was anything more than tourists having a nice visit to
That was insane. That
the
was
seat of
totally
democracy. I mean,
that was insane.
they're all in on lying and trying to make the big lie stick.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting to me that a legitimate attack on the Capitol to defend democracy against people stealing it would be okay.
It would be, but it will also be bloody. It'll be bloodier.
Yeah. I'm flabbergasted by those representatives who just, completely blew in the face of. I mean, for God's sakes, there's video, people. It's insane.
Okay,
it's not
Janet.
insane. It's their strategy, and within their diminished party, it works.
Dennis, do you think this is going to happen?
No, I don't. I don't think it's going to play out that way for several reasons. Strategically, the Republican Party is every man for himself, every man or woman for himself. They're only worried about trying to survive a primary challenge or not have a primary contender against them when they run for re-election, because they think their seats are relatively safe. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But I have to tell you, I've been taking an online course in Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And one of the things that...
Yeah, me too. I've been doing that.
Okay, so what chapter are you on?
The one that comes before the one you're on. I'm
That's-
behind you.
He's on that same chapter that Trump got stuck on in the Bible.
Well, the point
Corinthians.
is that in order to be a contender, you have to have organization. And the propeller heads that are doing this insurrection and whatever else you want to call it don't have an organization. They are no better than the Confederacy of the Civil War. The Confederacy lost the Civil War because they couldn't organize. Only states could raise an army. Only states could raise a budget. They couldn't raise enough money to field a force effectively. All they could do was say no. All they could do was fight a prolonged guerrilla war. And if you look at the strategy of the current GOP, they don't have an original idea. All they know how to do is say no. They don't have the wherewithal to be a party that wins and runs the country. Lastly, they're scaring the heck out of middle of the road people. And if you think the last election didn't scare a lot of people into Biden's camp, I think you're wrong. And I think the next election will be even more so.
So what I still want to know is whether it's going to work or not.
I just said it's not going to work. They don't have the organization.
Just because they're scaring the hell out of everybody.
No, I said they don't have the organization. They do not have the wherewithal to run this thing.
But do the Democrats have the wherewithal to actually get out enough people over the voter suppression laws to be able to win in 2020?
I do believe they can. I think everybody knows what's at stake.
Brand?
Only thing I would say is to Dennis, you might not want to come down to the southern states after making a statement like that, because several people, and quite honestly, a lot of people in all these states truly believe that they did not lose the Civil War. So, saying those kind of statements could get you killed down here. Just thought I'd point that one out.
Not having a visit to the southern states is like being deprived of rutabaga.
Hey, don't put down rutabaga.
Wow.
That's funny. It's not funny at all, Brent. It is a fact about the South. So all this sweating going on about what's happening now against a bunch of people who still can't get over something that happened, hundreds of years ago. It's pretty insane.
Can I remind you of the title of Heather Cox Richardson's? I think it's her most recent book. It's called "How the South Won the Civil War."
Yeah. Well,
So,
I mean, you could go back to
we whopped their army, but they won a lot of what they were looking for. They managed to reimpose their dominance over the freed slaves. They managed to reimpose the dominance of the large plantations in their society, and they managed to capture the Democratic Party through most of the 20th century, or at least stymie the northern faction of the Democratic Party until the Civil Rights Bill. So it was only in the mid 60s that the Democrats said, okay, we are not going along with the South. And the result of that was that the South said, okay, we're not going along with the Democrats. We'll invite the Republicans in.
I'm still trying to tease out the constant question that I have, which is why are the networks talking about this if it's not going to happen?
To sell car insurance.
It doesn't matter. The networks would talk about it anyway. That's part of what the whole dynamic of what's going on today in politics is, that everyone knows pretty much everyone knows how to play the news cycle. The news cycle is no longer 24 hours or 48 hours. It's 2 minutes or a minute and a half. And so you go after it, you dive into a story, and then the next one comes up and you move on, or you don't move on, you just pile on. I mean, and that's pretty much the way it is. And I think that's got a lot to do.
Right, can I present a contrarian view to that?
Absolutely.
We used to say that the news cycle is shrinking, but actually it's the other way. The news cycle now plays like soap operas did in the 40s, which is
I see what you're saying. It never stops. Yeah, it never stops.
The story
I get
never
that.
changes. So soap operas, I would say
within the story, Michael, within the story,
the
changes are so fast, it's ridiculous. The story
there are always new scenes and dialogue in a soap opera, but a soap opera is written so that if you don't listen for a week, you can come back and you haven't missed anything, because it's always the same dynamics. If you turn on MSNBC or Fox News any day, you will get the same stories. You may have different guests and different rants, but the story never changes. We've got a molasses news cycle with a lot of scurrying around.
Yeah, but all the soap operas. Sorry, Keith, I'll give you a second. Okay. All the soap operas have been decimated over the years because they're not sustaining competitive ratings. So we're down to like 2 of them at this point.
Well, yeah.
So what happens when people start to tune out the cable networks because they're selling the same insurance wrapper that somebody suggested? I mean,
so what I was going to say is it feels to me as if the media requires contestation. It requires a war or a battle. And it knows that if it can invent a war or a battle, both sides will engage. Whereas if it's telling the real news, which is that Biden's doing really well, that some of his innovations in policy are profound and deep and will have a major impact, everyone switches off because there's no battle. And so I think they're engagement and audience driven, not fact or real world driven. So yeah, I agree with the soap opera analogy. It's not reality TV, because if it was, it would be boring. It's soap opera TV through the news.
But the anxiety level is turning people off.
Well, certainly that's true for me. It's true for me. Is that true in
Right.
are the viewer figures down?
I think it
Fox
is,
and-
because most people don't have time to watch any of this.
Well, there's a whole other conversation to be had about how the viewers' numbers have been tallied during the pandemic. That's a whole other conversation.
Could we have it? What can you tell us about it?
Well,
You have
I'll
to
give you
get
an
his
example.
newsletter,
I mean,
basically.
this is a little bit of a different story. We're going to put on the brakes and make a hard right turn here a little bit.
Well, dare to be brave.
I'll be brave. So during the pandemic, Nielsen, which has an unarguable hold on all of video media, cable and broadcasting for sure, in terms of the numbers that they supply to the advertisers who put their rates against those numbers. So the higher the ratings, the more that you can charge for a commercial. That's the simple way of looking at it. And so the president of Discovery, David Zaslav, just said yesterday, and this is on the heels of a lot of discussion about this, that they lost a tremendous amount of money due to a Nielsen undercount. How do they get that money back? And all the executives are complaining about that right now, that there was an undercount and that the numbers are absolutely depressed. And you know, the fact is, though, I think that streaming has taken a tremendous amount of viewership away from broadcasting and cable. I think that's the main culprit in this story. But that doesn't mean that Nielsen doesn't undercount, because they're still pretty archaic. And that nobody has actually come up with the statistical measurement of the broader, all-encompassing 360-degree package that some advertiser can buy. And that's what I've been thinking about. Crickets. Yeah.
Crickets are okay.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't mean to take us down that road.
Well, I think isn't it the case that the only real accountable advertising is in the Google model of a pay-per-click? I mean, you know, you bid for presence, and if your presence captures someone, you pay for it.
You know, that's interesting that you mentioned that. I agree with that. I think that's absolutely true. But it's funny, the networks have decided to hang on to the traditional upfront methodology and rather than embrace programmatic buying. So buy your ads in advance of a year that here's what we think these shows are going to do, or you can trust us because we're Comcast, whatever. Or you buy programmatically at the moment in an auction style bidding situation, and the reality of what the numbers are more closely defined by the cost of buying that unit inside that program.
There was an interesting article this week by Packy McCormack. He's got this newsletter called Not Boring, and he notes that the TV ads now seem to have been reduced to only two types. Ads for the erectically challenged, and ads for for people who want to buy a car. In other words, there's medical ads.
What is that word that you said?
I think he meant he had something to do with erectile dysfunction.
Yeah, no, I understood the reference.
Erectically, I never heard that word.
I'm looking in the dictionary here, and I don't see that one coming up.
I made it up.
Well, you have to use erectically, because if you use it sounds too much like electorally.
I like erectically. It's a good word.
Erectically challenged. It's a lot better than having a disorder.
But I see a British citizen here making up a word that doesn't exist.
Honestly,
that's the way language lives.
It's a good word.
Yeah, but you know what you're doing,
guys. It's a good word. It's going to be in the dictionary.
They're not mutually exclusive. It can be good and also complete fabrication.
Anyway, the point is,
it's a sketch comedy, is what it is.
Well, you can either buy medicine or you can buy cars, and that's about it in all the ads. So you wonder whether the advertising industry is shrinking in terms of TV ads.
There's another one of those words.
Yes.
Well,
Very soon, erectically challenged is going to make it into the Oxford English Dictionary with a picture of Keith.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that'll show you the power of social media.
There you go.
I'm not in the field anymore, but if I was, I would challenge that assumption.
Yeah, you should make that the title of one of your next newsletter. Let's get it
Erectically
out there.
challenged.
Yeah, get it out there. Do a survey and ask if people know what it is. Let's waste some more time. Yeah.
Enough said.
It's
You know what they
amazing
say
what
about
we can do with this technology.
you know
just
what
really amazing.
you know what they say about people who keep repeating a phrase. It's that they can't let it go for fear of being thought to not have a problem with it. So every time you guys keep going on about this, you're outing yourselves.
Yeah. So I noticed one thing though, and I wonder if this is something that spreads across the industry, because I haven't talked to anybody about it. But for example, Keith, I'm watching YouTube TV, and I'm watching the local channel here. I could be watching it on the antenna, but I just happen to be watching it on YouTube TV because it's easier enough to use the user experience to move around in YouTube TV. And if the rest of you don't know what it is, it's a really great product.
That's not available on Buki and other networks.
Roku.
Yeah,
But it is now. No,
yeah.
no. Google shoehorned it into the YouTube app. Google basically screwed Roku up by adding it to the YouTube app.
So that's a smart thing.
I feel like I'm missing out. I don't have Buki. Yeah.
It's a Buki. Yeah, I had a guy down the street.
I haven't registered it yet. It has to be
Buki.
registered as a name before it can become one.
The Buki man has to come and deliver it to you. That's what has to happen.
Oh no! Oh boy!
Who's making up words now? I just
Wasn't that character in the Budweiser commercial? What's up, yo, Buki? Oh no, that was Pookie.
Oh, it's going down real fast here, folks.
Isn't it? I completely.
That would
forgot what I
require
was-
it having been up before.
I was going to say, oh yeah. So Keith, what I
Which
was
goes
talking
back to
about
Keith's
was
word. All right.
watching YouTube TV. It seems to me there are way more places where advertising, which is living in that local station spot, not being sold on YouTube TV and being a piece of like sort of that Zen-like sound effect that they use with a pretty picture that says commercial here. So that's either one of two things. Either they're not selling it across the board and they're letting those things play as a thing for the customer, in which case I think there's a problem. And the other thing is that maybe there isn't enough inventory. I don't know which one of those is correct, but that's
I
just
think
an
they're not
anecdote.
selling the streaming ad segment as part of the package, because if you're not watching it on YouTube TV, there's none of these things that say we're now in a commercial break. But on
Right.
YouTube TV, quite often we're now in a commercial break, but there's no commercials.
Right. So what are they covering? They're covering something that was probably sold to the local station.
It reminds me, Frank, you'd know about this, but I have a good friend, Ed Bennett, who used to be at MTV and Viacom. He ended up being the CEO of Prodigy back in the 90s. And then Ed was the guy at Viacom who built the one-stop shop for cable TV ad sales.
Yeah.
So you could go to one place and buy across all the cable TV networks. And it feels as if that's now been orphaned because the cable TV networks are no longer where the action's at, streaming is. And streaming ad sales, there's no one-stop shop, I guess.
No, in New York, for example, there's the Interconnect, which is the one-stop shop that you would go to. Just by the way, so when I was a producer at Nightline back in the early 80s, I did the very first television story about MTV, which I just posted on my Facebook page today because for some reason it appeared in my feed. So I guess it was 1983. It's interesting because Rick James made the comment in this spot that blacks were being excluded from MTV in its earliest days, and it became a huge bone of contention. There was a lot of conversation about it, and it all came out about because the producer of the show said to me, "Well, this piece of shit doesn't have any conflict. Go find me some conflict." And so we found Rick James. Not that it wasn't a true story, but it's just that we hadn't found Rick James until after I was pushed into going out and finding someone like Rick James. I had no idea where the conflict was going to come. It didn't seem like there was any conflict with MTV. It turned out there was. It was a big one.
The other interesting thing this week, which links to this, is Vice announced they're moving to a streaming channel with ads.
Yeah.
And also, was it Peacock? I think it was Peacock.
Now, why is that interesting, and why is it linked, and why is it related?
Well, because it also coincides with, I think it was Paramount saying they were going to do an ad-supported, cheaper version of their streaming app. So
yeah, Peacock is definitely doing it, and so is Discovery.
But I'm losing the thread here. We started talking about the political situation and the fact that at least the surmise on my part that people are turning off political coverage because they're not interested in being scared to death on a constant 24/7 basis. So, and then Frank started to explain the Byzantine world of advertising. And then you just brought up something else. So what is that something else, and why is it interesting, and why is it related?
Well, it basically, I think the related glue between all of this is audience behavior with streamed media, news being one of them. We talked about soap operas and reality TV. And I talked about the need for a battle in news, and you said people are tired of that, which I hope that's true, but I'm not convinced the numbers are going down for Fox and MSNBC. I hope they are, but I'd love to know the facts on that. Anyway, I think the link is audience behavior and engagement with streaming media. I actually think most people hate advertising on stream media as well. So I suspect all these trends towards ad-supported streaming are going to fail, or at least not be as successful as the ad-free streaming.
But isn't that, Frank, isn't that the opposite of what is apparently happening?
Well, first of all, that is the biggest question of the industry right now. Which one survives, advertiser-supported video on demand or subscription-supported video on demand? And almost all the players, even as you mentioned, Keith, are going down the two roads parallel. I think a lot of it has to do with probably trying to just give it some time and figure out which is going to be the winner. But my opinion is that if there are fewer pods and it's been reconfigured, it might make it more palatable to say, oh, I'll pay £4 or $4 for a subscription, or free for an advertiser-supported domain. Look, I think that a lot of it has to do, in terms of news, pretty specifically, it's nobody's figured out how to do news differently on the stream. Right now, what's being streamed as news is programs that are already broadcast as news that are put on the stream. That's the majority of it. Vice has actually done some pretty interesting new kind of stuff. And unless people get to see it on the stream, they're not going to know that there's really a different way of doing it.
Well, I've seen the word Vice on my screen, but I don't know anything at all about the programming.
So they've been doing a lot of stuff on.
I understand
HBO.
they've been trying to put forth a value proposition of reinventing whatever that is. Non-mainstream supported news broadcasting, right?
So yes, and I think
okay,
that they've
but
been
have
doing,
they actually been successful with that?
Yes, I think as a matter of fact, they just had an IPO, which was really successful. I'm pretty sure that just happened. And
was it a SPAC?
No, it was an IPO, I believe. It
that
wasn't
is
a SPAC.
not necessarily a validator.
It wasn't an NFT either. But anyway, as I digress, they are, I believe, at the forefront of some kind of change in the way that news is being done and presented. And a lot of it, to answer your question about MSNBC and Fox, the numbers haven't gone down. It's program oriented, and the numbers are still very high for both of them. When Hannity reports numbers, they're pretty big. Look, the reality is, as big as they are, it's minuscule compared to the way the news numbers used to be just 5 years ago, if you were looking at the big three. But that doesn't matter, because they get replayed and clipped and added and shared all over the internet, which is the way that this stuff needs to be thought of. It's like, what is the end product of what a news program is? This is me rambling. What is the end product of what a news program is? It's not that 30 minutes with Lester Holt sitting in front of a screen.
You know what blew me away this week, Frank, is I don't want to, it's about
That's
the
right.
news, but it blew me away that Morning Joe, the morning after the big bombings in the West Bank and Gaza, didn't cover Israel at all. They only covered Liz Cheney. I was kind of thinking, wow, how is Liz Cheney a bigger story than what's going on in the Middle East?
Was that this morning?
No, it was on Thursday.
Yesterday morning?
Yeah.
Because I missed it one morning. That must have been the morning that I missed it, because today was all about Israel. Because there's a troop movement on the border right now. I cannot imagine, because I've been there a couple of times during war zone periods. I was there during the Beirut incursion, and for one, in '83, I guess. And there is just no way that a land battle is going to get fought in Gaza. It's not going to happen. There's tunnels, there's buildings. It's just not going to happen.
Well, aside from that, just the fact that Morning Joe
didn't do it
just made me think, wow, they're so committed to this battle narrative that they're ignoring actual huge world events now.
I would have jumped on that too had I seen that. I'm kind of surprised by that, actually. I am. That's look.
I think that's stretching confrontation equals rating success point more than it needs to. What's going on from my perspective in the television news business is exemplified by what Brian Williams has been doing on the 11th Hour, which is his closer, which he's starting to sneak in mainstream coverage, because basically he was fired effectively for exaggeration, I guess you could call it, and lost the nightly news. And what he's trying to do is to re-engineer the 11th Hour to be a broader mainstream news show. And so what he does is he has the first three people on the program. He has one who's covering the politics, one that's covering the virus, and one that's covering whatever this, re-engineered kind of news model that he's trying to put forth. And I think that's what's going on with Morning Joe. It's got nothing to do with fear and anxiety distribution.
Well, I think that plays into what I was talking about a second ago, is what is the end product of a news program? It's not that 30 minutes or even the 2 hours if you're Morning Joe, the second hour, which is a repeat of the first hour, unless there's big news. And that is, how's the content getting used after the show's gone off the air? What gets the biggest play? I think Morning Joe may be one of the very best players in that game right now. Because within half an hour of the time the show's over, there's a newsletter that's come out that's got 5 or 6 video clips of things that happened in the show. Fabulous. And then by the end of the day, it's been shared over and over again. I can see movement of it. And sometimes I can see it come up as like a trend on Twitter. They figured it out. That's what the new model is. And Brian does some of that too, but a lot of what he does isn't short enough to clip off.
Yeah, I mean, I like Brian Williams, but I think that this attempt that he's making here to, basically invent the 60-minute news show is not working and won't work.
Define work.
Why do you think
not going to be successful for him or the network? It's going to reduce his his credibility, because he's, kind of, he's trying to make it look like it works and it doesn't. That's just
Well, I
my,
don't spend enough time watching it, but it sounds like your opinion to me.
of course.
Yeah, I think you can't lose sight of the fact that the audience for news is limited. The
Yeah.
audience for obsessing about political battles is limited. Most people have lives. It's not the most important thing that they do. The audience for hockey is limited. We're in a very fragmented world.
Yeah.
The people who are into hockey are really into hockey. The people who are into news are really into news. But we have this broad spectrum of ways to spend our times now.
Yeah, I think that's true. I also think that what Frank said is true, which is that we're moving from one place to another place. What that place is, I think, is, I'm not sure that I would agree with what everybody else on this screen thinks. I think that people are sick of obsessing with news, but they want to know as much as possible what information is important to them so that they can keep their family and friends safe.
That's why local news is doing as well. It's actually making, there's a comeback happening nationally for local news. And there's a tremendous amount of money being spent by companies to buy up local news stations around the country, whether they're attached to a network or not. It's funny though, there's, on the one hand, there's a lot of local news being produced, but not produced locally. Sinclair does that to a certain extent. Hard to tell me what, you just do a cut in with weather and traffic. Is that local news? I don't think so. But there's certainly money being spent in that arena.
What I always wondered, Steve will remember this, it goes back a couple of years, but with everyone having a smartphone and a camera and a high quality microphone, and almost anything interesting that happens being videoed,
yeah,
why isn't anyone using the metadata that is in those videos, which gives you pretty precise location mostly? Why isn't anyone built, a kind of an ingestion network that has everything from everyone that allows you to then editorialize on top of all that raw material?
That's a good question. It's a good question. Seems like a network. seems like everybody's trying to think of new ways to do things, but aren't doing those things that they're thinking about because things are moving so quickly.
Imagine a world map that had little red spots wherever people were videoing stuff. Wherever something big was happening, there'd be a whole cluster of little red spots. You'd have kind of a heat map of world news, right? Just from people's smartphones.
That could be a new online news network program.
I think it's called Twitter.
Kind of.
Yeah, but Twitter,
kind of, but Twitter goes off in tangents.
Well, also Twitter doesn't really think through the macro level assets it's got and how it could own all of that. It's in the micro features a lot, Twitter. The macro level assets on Twitter are exactly the closest thing to what I just described, but they don't present it in a way.
It's not out there.
Well,
Right.
there's an organization called Bellingcat, which does not do it on a global level, but they do it very specifically using as much metadata as possible to reconstruct things. And they did a very remarkable reconstruction of what happened on January 6th by synchronizing camera shots from a variety of participants and actually reconstructing the event with remarkable clarity.
In real time. I mean, in the analog time that it occurred. So 5 cameras happened at 4:03 p.m. Right?
At the Prince video.
But even after the event, as a post-event reconstruction, they were able to do even more And they broadcast an hour of it on MSNBC a few weeks ago. Richard Engel
Oh, he's great.
reports was part of that.
Yeah,
He's
it
great.
looks interesting. You're right. It definitely has. It has what I would think of as a subset of what I think the opportunity to reinvent news is right there.
Yeah.
It's just that, and I'm too old and too tired to do it. I thought about some of this stuff for the Now TV domain name that I own, but
Dennis,
my-
do you agree with any of this, or do you basically, are you happy with your newspaper?
Well, I'm happy with my newspaper, but I also think that we're stuck in a commoditization of news. I think there's too much news, not enough people wanting to pay for it. The networks don't want to invest real dollars in making a better product. I'm sorry, the networks don't want to invest dollars in making a better product. The newspapers can't raise enough money to do their jobs well. So as a consequence, you got the consumer in the middle. The consumer, I think, is fed up, partly because they're being saturated by social media. So that part of their attention is being used up by social media. But on the other hand, nobody wants to watch news and come away from it not feeling like they've won in some basic human way. If what they do is watch news and come away from it with, oh geez, it's even worse than we thought, or it's just the same old soap opera and nothing's changed. I don't think that sells a lot of car insurance.
Brant?
I'm just sitting here wondering how many of us are ready to go out without masks.
Mm.
All right, well, answer the question.
I don't know how many of us are ready. Everybody.
I'm ready,
how many-
but I won't.
Ready,
I'm ready, but I
you're ready,
won't.
but you won't.
Yeah.
Last
All
night I
right.
had to go to the store, and driving around in Kirkland, all the pedestrians I saw were wearing masks outdoors. And when I got to the store, everybody in the store was wearing masks. So granted, it was only day one of the new guidance, but people either hadn't heard of it or hadn't taken it on board. They were still all masked up.
I think it's simpler than that. I think if you're fully vaccinated, you're going to start, you're going to stop wearing masks outside. And then eventually you're going to start to see indications coming from proprietors in stores and other venues of some sort of mask identification policy. And at that point, you're going to start taking your mask off inside too.
So in London, which is scheduled to open up on the 17th of this month, so that's in a few days, has just announced that they've just discovered 400 of the India variant in one community in central London. Yeah, that's scary to me. But I haven't heard. Maybe you have, Keith, that the variant is or maybe you've heard, Dennis. Does the variant work against? Or does the current vaccines work against this variant? They haven't actually made that clear. I don't know what's happening with that.
So what I watched BBC News a couple of days ago in the city of Bolton, which is near Manchester, and they had 593 cases of the Indian variant in a single day, but nobody that got it was vaccinated. So I think the implication is the vaccine does work against it, but it's very virulent.
It's also too soon also to know there aren't enough.
Well, there are going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered, but in general, Fauci seems to be suggesting that the accumulated data suggests that if you're fully vaccinated, that you will not be hospitalized or die.
Yes, That's
Okay.
everything I've
Well,
seen.
I mean, that's the ball game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have
You
you
know,
seen,
Trump-
have you seen the note from Trump, not demanding, well, kind of demanding for credit for the,
Well, I think he should get it. It's the one thing that he did right.
He was
Sort of.
certainly part. He was certainly part of it, but his logistics sucked.
Not
That's
not
the-
giving him credit is, cancel culture, isn't it?
Sure, but I would give him credit if he helped convince his followers that they should take the vaccine.
Yeah, but
He's playing a game that I don't want to play.
yeah, I mean, on the one side, there's that. Then there's a whole bunch of other stuff where we don't want to give him credit, like 590,000 deaths.
Well, look, fair is fair. If he wants credit for the Pfizer vaccine, then he also has to take ownership of hydroxychloroquine and mainlining
Bleach.
Clorox into your veins. So he's 1 for 3. Okay, that's great.
And for hundreds of thousands of deaths that didn't have to be if he had acted quicker.
More
But
than
wasn't
500,000
Pfizer-
counting.
Pfizer didn't use government money though, did it?
Okay,
on,
so it was Moderna. It was
Yeah, I
one of
think
them.
it was Moderna.
And Pfizer didn't use government money, but they took an advance order for
Yeah.
millions of doses. So they had a ready market. They
Yeah.
knew they weren't going to lose money on it.
How much money are these companies going to make on this drug? Even is it trillions? Is it a huge number like that?
I don't know. I think it's at least billions. I know that.
I think I read somewhere that they all had to agree to be not for profit for the first 12 months. But maybe I'm wrong.
Well, Brent, why did you want to ask about how many people are going to take their masks off? What are you trying to get at?
I'm just really curious because it seemed like that came kind of out of the blue overnight. And I haven't been out yet because, we're having this gas shortage. So I don't want to use gas without really needing to until it calms down here. But I'm just curious, having heard it yesterday, I already, talked to my sister. I was like, I'm not taking my mask off right now. I mean, maybe outside, but when I head into a store, I still think I'm masking up.
I think there's two different reasons, Brent. The first is, do you need to wear a mask medically? And I think the definitive answer to that is now out, which is no. The second is, do you feel the need to wear it socially? I go for a walk with my wife every day through a local park, and it's pretty sparse, but everyone's still wearing a mask. And partly it's because they don't want to offend other people by not wearing a mask in case the other people still want them to. So there's a kind of a social imperative to wear a mask that's going to take a little while to get out of the system. As Steve said, there'll be little steps and eventually they'll go away for the most part.
The signal, the social signal that you're describing will be replaced by a social signal about vaccination.
Yeah. And you can't
Which is,
tell who is and who isn't when you're out. So
That's not as visible. So, I joked on Facebook today that I was going to print my vaccination card onto a
Good
mask
idea.
and wear that.
Great idea. Great idea. Absolutely great idea. You should sell it.
But, there's no easily visible way to show that you are vaccinated, unless people, and there's no easily verifiable way to show that you are vaccinated.
This is another job for the not insane button.
Well, I think this goes to the issue of whether or not there's going to be an effective way to do a vaccine passport. I mean, there's certainly an effective way to create a thing. I think was it you, Michael, or somebody posted a vaccine passport from California, which is government approved.
It wasn't me. The federal government has said pretty adamantly they're not going to do it. So whether it's something that businesses do or state governments do is an open question.
The problem is
Uh,
validation, because the cards are so easy to forge.
Yeah.
That unless the issuing authority issues a digital version, you can't do it.
I think it should be an NFT.
There
Well,
goes
blockchain
Bennett.
at least.
It's already done, Frank. No, seriously, it's already been proposed. My question,
Really?
yeah, of course.
An
The
NFT for
the
a
sanctity of the blockchain is the question,
Hmm.
which I'm sure that Keith will have a good answer for that, and then I'll ask him what the downside of it is. I mean, is the blockchain, does it really work?
Well, the blockchain is just a database. So it works if by what you mean does it work is, can you validate that a record on it was really put there? Yes, you can. Can you validate where it came from? Yes, you can. So if authorities chose to publish vaccination records on a blockchain, you could know it came from the authority and who it was for. And
But
it
we
would
just heard somebody suggest that it's unlikely. I think it was Frank. It's unlikely that governments are going to sign on to this. So
then it won't work. It won't work.
So in other words, the blockchain won't work.
Nothing will work unless
No.
the issuing authority is prepared to issue a digital version either on or off the blockchain.
Right. It's GIGO.
Yeah.
Right?
What?
It's GIGO. It's garbage in, garbage out. And the key thing is getting the information in the first place. How do you trust getting the information in? If you can't trust that, you're gonna have all the blockchain you want. It ain't gonna matter.
So they'll never do that. There won't be a vaccine passport. There'll be something. I think businesses will agree that individual businesses will do it, and
Yeah, I agree with that.
restaurants and bars and things like that, music venues. I think there'll be maybe even sporting events. I don't know. But
Our producer and director says that is shaking her head saying, no, there's no incentive.
My 20-year-old has
I
a
don't agree
driver's.
with her, by the way.
My 20-year-old has a fake driver's license that gets validated at the liquor store,
sure,
which he bought online, and all of his friends know where to get them.
Everybody can get them online. They are so easy to get. You can buy an international driver's license online, and it looks exactly like an international driver's license. I've seen.
So these vaccine things, anyone who wants to pretend they've been vaccinated when they haven't will be able to. So local validation, like at a nightclub or a bar, isn't going to be effective.
Well, I'm not going into a bar.
What's the incentive for a business to require people be vaccinated?
Depends. If they haven't been vaccinated, it's life. But
I was just thinking the same thing. But the restaurants, the venues are going to.
The incentive is to try and drive traffic. If people are reluctant to go to the store is going to try and figure out some way to make people feel safe, and that's what their incentive is. If people just simply start shopping again and going out, they won't have any incentive to create a vaccine passport. The interesting thing on the state level is that New York has some kind of a vaccine pass, but what's more likely to happen, and is happening in many states, is that the state legislatures are prohibiting vaccine passports. You could.
Well,
it's like everything else. It's becoming a political label, a political issue as to which side you're on.
Well, those are the states that I'm going to drive around. I mean,
you can see
we're not going to go there.
You can see both sides of the argument. Should there be vaccine passports? Obviously, there's a whole civil liberties aspect that says there should not be, and there's a life aspect that says there should be. My middle kid absolutely won't get the vaccine, and when you ask him why, he says, because I don't know 10 years from now whether there'll be some really negative impact that we only find out in 10 years, and I'm not prepared to take the risk. Okay, I disagree with him, but it's not kind of irrational.
Well, I have
Well,
people
it
who make the
kinda
same
is.
argument about holding a cell phone up to their head. The radiation is going to affect your brain over 10 years.
Yeah.
Let's
Well,
not forget
you
those
know,
windmills kill birds.
this all goes to the fact that the generation that was spawned out of the space race that we are all part of, that made the technology world happen, is passing from the scene. The people who are replacing us don't know dick about science, and because they don't, they can make some really strange claims. If you know the rudiments of high school biology, you know that 10 years from now, your body is not going to have a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think
think
I
that-
tried to explain to him RNA vaccines versus the J&J one, which uses a little benign piece of the virus. And logically, and I'm a social scientist, so I'm barely a scientist, not at all a scientist actually, but I was able to at least put that together from what I've read. It doesn't matter. It's a kind of an entirely irrational, this could go bad, and knowledge doesn't help.
The reason that I think that the CDC made this announcement is entirely because they're trying to encourage vaccination, and I think it will work.
Well, the numbers went up almost immediately after they made the announcement.
So if there's an economic imperative, let's say there are 3 restaurants that we've been thinking about. Gee, wouldn't it be great if we could go to them? And one of them, it's a free for all. It's next to a bar, and people come from the bar into the, it's Wild West. And the second one, they messaged that they're safe. And then the third one has signs on to some sort of economic, business created or managed program to identify and to certify to the best of their ability vaccinations. Which one are we going to go to? I'm going to go to the third one.
Yeah, me too.
If the data shows that the vaccine protects you, what difference does it make to you?
There you go.
That's why there's no incentive.
This is why Tina thinks there's no incentive, but
This is why there's
I
vanilla
just
and
explained
chocolate.
what the incentive is.
No, it's the same to you. You're protected exactly the same for all those 3 different situations. The people who are not protected are the people who are not vaccinated.
Tina's
Tomato,
right.
tomato. Yeah.
The
exactly right.
logic behind vaccinations as being perpetuated, in other words, getting to 70, 80, 90% penetration of the country, is to avoid the possibility of variants that we do not know how impactful they might be. It is not about protecting people in real time. It's about, having society have the ability to respond to this crisis by creating a so-called new normal that people are going to actually go out and pursue economic activity. And I think that's what's going on here. So I think that, we immediately sort of went to the issue of certification. And, as Keith has said, there are all sorts of political and other reasons why that's a non-starter. But that doesn't mean that it's a non-starter, as Frank suggests, that coming from a business perspective, that this isn't going to have the effect that is being looked for with this announcement, which is, okay, if you don't have to, the attraction is, I don't have to wear a mask. It's not whether or not I'm vaccinated.
Yeah.
Do
I agree. It changes the center of gravity of the conversation to freedom from non-freedom. As Frank said, that is already having an impact in the numbers. I saw that today as well. So that will work. And if you got 153 million people in the US who are vaccinated and feel invulnerable to variants, that will mean ultimately they will go back to full activity without fear of being infected by others.
And I also think that politically, it's going to have an impact on states who, refuse to recognize the rule of law and other kinds of, common sense, like you can't lie in public if you're a public official. That those states are going to be hurt economically by
and politically.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is the economics are what the value proposition is.
I think the aeroplane thing is kind of interesting because like my in-laws in South Africa are 80 now. They haven't been vaccinated yet because the vaccine is not evenly distributed around the world. I went there. I probably want to go there again this year, but there'll be a lot of people on the airplane who are not vaccinated. I'll be hopefully invulnerable to catching anything, but they can still catch things from each other. So probably the airlines are going to they're not going to do a vaccine passport, but they're probably going to say, keep your masks on because they can't distinguish between who is and who isn't vaccinated.
And they have the ability to require, as a condition of purchase of the ticket, to require some sort of certification. Whether or not it's 100% effective or not is irrelevant.
Well, the borders can require negative tests before entry, which have to be shown to the airline before getting on. You can do that. They already do that, actually.
But I'd rather have some sort of certification of vaccination than having to be tested every leg of a trip to
Me too,
the
yeah.
East Coast.
No, I'm with you, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Not for a while.
Well, some colleges
well, I
and
gotta tell you, it's
universities have
very
already told their incoming students that they have to have proof of vaccination to get back on campus in September.
Yep, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that could begin to spread.
Pardon the expression. We're starting to run down on time here, so at the risk of changing the subject, what are you talking about, Dennis, with this AT&T thing, so that we can get this off the calendar?
So, my wife went to buy an iPhone 12, and the clerk at the Apple store said, "Don't forget to upgrade your coverage to 5G." And she came home and said that to me, and I said, "This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Here's my phone. I turn it on, I got 5G." And believe it or not, we found some documentation on the internet that AT&T was simply putting 5G on your phone without supporting 5G. And
so you were getting a 4G signal, but it said 5G.
I was getting a 4G signal. It said 5G, and I felt great.
See, truth doesn't matter.
Now I'm wondering. They've been telling this lie for what, 18 months, 2 years?
Are you sure, Dennis? I'm not convinced. It may be that the people who are saying that are making it up. I'm not convinced. Have you looked into it?
I have. I've read stuff online.
Yeah, there's
News articles.
information about the rebranding of 5G as sort of hybrid down level 4G support in some areas, blah, blah, blah.
Right, or 5GE.
Yeah.
So the earlier stories about what AT&T did there, AT&T tried to take the position, from what I read, that they were just getting ready for the mounting of 5G, and that is why it came up. So, and they even actually I believe they took credit for doing the wrong thing, and then never changed it.
Yeah. And what was even more bizarre, my wife handles the interface with AT&T. She called them And the rep on the phone said, yeah, we can do that, but you just have to be prepared for slowdowns during busy periods.
Great.
Well,
Yeah.
so I can help here a little bit. So 5G is actually just a symbolic name for quite a few different technologies. And they all have different speeds. And at the low end, they're no faster than 4G. And at the very high end, which barely exists, Verizon has a few, they can go up to like a gigabit in and out. So 5G actually isn't really a thing. It's a marketing term for about four things. And AT&T and T-Mobile and Verizon all have different parts of those four things. Verizon has theoretically the fastest, but it doesn't go very far. T-Mobile has something in the middle that is fairly fast and goes long distance. And AT&T has the one on the other side, which goes longer distance, but is really no better than 4G. And so they're packaging something called 5G that's allowed to be called 5G, but it doesn't mean it's better than 4G always.
Well, this is where I think that the YouTube TV thing is going to intersect. The other day, it was around 1 o'clock in the morning. We suddenly, we had an outage or something happened. And so I switched over, as I usually do. We have a Verizon phone, and I switched over to it as the source for watching video. And it came up and said 5G. Now, I don't want to go into the long song and dance about this, but because I have two lines on that phone, there's they don't support, Apple doesn't support 5G. And so it says 4G. Frank, you're out of here?
Gotta go. Sorry, guys.
Bye-bye, Frank.
I'm doing a BBC podcast.
See you next
Okay.
time.
Good
See
luck.
ya. Bye.
Have a
BBC
good week.
broadcast.
Yeah.
I call myself the Brent Broadcasting Channel. We
I have an older phone. I have an older
You know,
phone. Doesn't take
I'll
5G.
tell them.
But
Bye.
bye-bye.
So
I have an older
the
phone,
net
an
of this
original
is,
iPhone 10. It is not rated for 5G, but sometimes when I look down at it, it puts up a 5G signal on it. I don't know who is sending me the characters 5G.
I logged back on and after the outage, and I may be wrong about this, but maybe not. I think that they've fixed the problem with multiple channels on the iPhone to support 5G, because it hasn't said 5G for 5 months, and all of a sudden now it says 5G. So
Yeah,
what I
that's-
think is going on is that they're preparing. If we've got this Comcast relationship,
Tenuous
in
relationship.
quotes. Yeah, we're dating for like 40 years now. And if we switched over, as Keith has suggested to me, if there's a free package for like a month, switched over to YouTube TV, which supports cloud recording of all channels. I mean, it's really extraordinary what they're doing. We can find out whether we're in the new world or not, and it doesn't have to be necessarily supported by the Comcast broadband. And if that's the case, there's going to be an economic shootout between Verizon and other carriers to service that new video reality.
So,
I think that we're really close to that happening right now.
So Steve, just to confirm your suspicion, iOS 14.5 upgraded the phone to support 5G in dual SIM mode, which is what you're using.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong then.
No.
No, I agree that there is. I did do the upgrade of the. Yeah, I was assuming that maybe they're serving a different quality of 5G now than they used to, but there's no data to support that. given what you
The-
just said.
Yeah, Apple doesn't have the ability to have any influence on the type of 5G. It's purely the carrier and the wireless tower and the hardware that they've got and the software it's running. So Apple's just a pass through. That said, the next generation of 5G is not going to require a SIM at all. And it will open up the possibility of Apple being its own telco.
Yeah. And, just the single sign-on capability to be able to switch across. We've been experimenting looking at the MSNBC app on Apple TV because we figured out that we can actually control the volume, aka the mute switch, from our phone rather than having to find the unfindable Apple remote. Now, that may sound like not a big deal, but as we get back into a situation where we can control from the phone all television and services input, that's a big deal.
Yeah. I would
Okay,
agree.
anybody else have anything that they want to discuss?
That damn remote is the one thing that you should put one of those Apple tags on.
That's right.
Someone has printed a 3D case for the remote that has a little circular in the back so that you can put an Apple tag onto the back of your remote.
And Apple has created a new Apple TV remote, which is bigger, so you can't lose it.
Well, less likely to lose it. I've lost bigger remotes than that one.
That's right.
They should have built the tag thing into the remote so that you didn't have to attach it.
Yes, but then you wouldn't have to buy a tag.
No, they could charge a bit more.
Maybe
All right,
someday.
well, I'm going to wrap this up, I guess.
Good.
Having too much fun. Oh, good. Perfect.
Well, I got to get out without my mask.
Yeah, I think Brent's right. I think we're all I'm not going into a restaurant until without a mask. That's for sure.
Well, you should though. If you believe the science, you should. What is it? Just what would stop you?
I believe the science last week. I believe it this week. It doesn't mean that they're saying the same thing this week.
True. But that
Well,
to me that puts you.
Pay attention to Bill Maher and the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
They've been vaccinated. 7 of the Yankees have tested positive. If they don't get sick, then you'll know the vaccine is working.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that's it's about not whether you can contract the virus anymore. It's about what are the implications of contracting it.
Yeah. What will the virus do to you?
Yeah. Okay. I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gilmore.
Thank you, folks. Thank you. Nice show. Glad to see you.
I want to thank Frank Radis, who's now appearing on the BBC. I want to thank
The other one, the other BBC.
Yeah, there's these down level legacy networks, right?
I'm going to
I
start
don't have
calling
the
myself.
little stream a certification card. I want to thank Keith Tier.
KTV.
Is that okay? Or you're welcome, or thank you?
It was a great pleasure to be here. I only wish we could do this every day.
Well, there is Clubhouse.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, I'll meet you over there. No, I won't. Thanks to Dennis Pomerant.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good conversation.
Thanks to Brent Leary.
I'm still happy about my biscuit hat. So
What is the context of biscuit?
I just like the hat, so I bought it, and
Uh-huh.
it fit
But
in
what does it
nicely.
represent?
It's actually some kind of a minor league team that
Oh.
down here. Of course, it's down in the south because biscuits in the south. So.
Biscuits and gravy.
Yeah, luckily there's
I-
no gravy.
I was going to dispute your characterization of being killed in the South, just because I've been taught that Southerners are very hospitable.
This
As
is
long as
this
you-
is what you do when I'm saying goodbye to everybody. You're starting a new show.
Sorry.
That's all right. Thanks to Michael Markman.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.